Welcome back to Straight Out the Jungle, a Field of 68 affiliate podcast where we are here to talk about all things Auburn men's basketball. Rett, what went down yesterday is going to go down as, in my opinion, one of the craziest finishes to a college basketball game. Certainly the craziest that I've seen in person. And it is a loss for the Auburn Tigers that drops them to 0-2 in SEC play for the first time since that COVID season.
Yeah, it was. I think if that shot goes in, it's definitely the craziest finish because it misses. I don't know if I can quite put it there, but man, that was the most interesting basketball game I think I've ever seen. I was sitting next to our buddy Caleb the whole game, and we were just going back and forth. And Justin Ferguson tweeted about this too. Just said this game is weird. This game is goofy. It was weird the whole time. It came out awful. Both teams combined for 5 turnovers in the first 2 minutes. Auburn started slow and then finished the first half great, got up 10, and then was up as many as 16 in the second half, and then turnover, and A&M was right back in it. And it felt like, okay, Auburn's just got to call a timeout, adjust, and they never could. And A&M got up 10, and then all of a sudden Auburn came roaring back. It was the weirdest, most back-and-forth basketball game in swings. It was not lead change after lead change, but it was one of the weirdest basketball games I've ever seen, and a fitting ending. And I think he got the shot off. I think that's a really hard call to overturn with the angles they have. But it is what it is, and you're 0-2 in SEC play, and time to move on to a tough game on Saturday.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's exactly that. It is what it is. We'll show you guys the uncut version of their Tigers' reaction to the final play and the final call. You can get a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look. So the basket's good on the floor. The players are reacting as if it is good. They show the replay in the arena. They then celebrate again.
Because it seems like there's nothing
good.
Indisputable.
And then it's overturned, and you see Texas A&M run off their bench. The officials run out of the arena. Stephen Pearl following with the iPad saying, the ball is out, the ball is out.
Yeah.
Because the screenshot he has from the iPad, it's fairly clear. And there was also a few different replays going around. One where the clock was incorrect.
Learned last night that the clocks in the corners of the arena where the scoreboards are about a tenth of a second behind.
Yeah.
Maybe not even a tenth, but at least there is a time where they show 0.1 and the backboard is lit up red. And the backboard is official. That's mechanical delay, I suppose.
Which is crazy.
In the time that it takes to
you
get
would
there,
think that we would have that, locked in at this point with the technological advances that we have in today's society. You would find a time. But at the end of the day, I think it's one of those things where there's no real look that shows the ball is in his hands or out of his hands.
Yeah, I think it's got to be.
Go with the call on the floor.
Exactly.
And so do I think Auburn was robbed of one? Yes, I do.
Yeah, I think robbery is tough because, one, Auburn threw that game away.
True.
But then they did everything possible to get it back. To me, the most pivotal stretch in that game, other than the 3 straight turnovers getting the ball in bounds, was you came back after the under 4 timeout with Keyshawn Hall at the free throw line. He missed back-to-back free throws. On the next possession, Murph gets an and one and misses a free throw. That's 3 points that you, especially with Keyshawn Hall, expect to have. Auburn then loses the game by 2. That's a difference-making moment. And then, of course, we haven't even talked about it yet, but the situation, and Bucky McMillan was all over this in the post-game press conference where he basically said A&M got a makeup call because of what happened on the free throw. The free throw preceding the final play, 2.6 seconds on the clock. Does the ball hit the rim? Does it not? I didn't think it did, but that one was close. The officials kind of flub that also and decide to sort of split the difference, put 0.6 on the clock, and give Auburn the ball with 3/4 score. Stephen Pearl said in the postgame, I don't envy their job. I would never be an official. They have an impossible task. But there's got to be an explanation for some of this stuff. And I think that's the biggest thing that Auburn fans, well beyond basketball, are wanting. And I think college sports fans in general want to hear explanations from the officials because last night, the last 3 seconds of that game, just a lot of questions.
Exactly. And, a lot of times they come on the mic and say, all right, here's what's going to happen. Here's why we're putting point. But they just say, all right, 0.6 on the clock.
Yeah.
Why? I
think
not only does Stephen Pearl deserve to know why, I think Coach McMillan deserves to know why as well. Both staffs, the fans in the arena, the players, there's got to be some sort of reasoning for why, 1, it's sideline out of bounds.
Yeah.
2, why it's 0.6 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think if you're the officials,
all they did was they blew
sure,
the whistle, said there's a clock malfunction, and then gave Auburn did have possession of the ball, about 3/4 court. I understand side out right there.
If you're not
it was
sure
poorly done.
Yeah,
like I
think
you need to blow that dead.
You need, as soon as you're not sure if it's the rim or not, you got to blow it dead and go take a look. In my opinion,
probably
in my
so.
opinion, because it's a close play. And
SP is right that they do have a near impossible task, but I think transparency is what we want as people covering the team and what the media wants as a whole, and more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but more loudly, what fans want. Fans and teams want transparency from the officials that just don't feel like we get. But Stephen Pearl hit the nail on the head. He said, quote, what the heck else are we going to do? He didn't say heck. He was all over the place in the post-game presser, understandably. A long night, a late night, and a lot going on. But you move on to Arkansas. You play a really good Arkansas team Saturday, and you get another chance at home. You're 0-2 in the SEC. You're behind the ball. This team, man, last night to me showed exactly what they are, and it is an inconsistent team that at its best is great, and at its worst is bad and can give up points in a hurry. And we saw both of those last night. Auburn started really bad, couldn't hold on to the ball, couldn't defend. Then after about 5 minutes into the game, from that point until midway through the second half, they looked great. They were plus 24 in that, it's not the middle 8, but in that mid stretch of the game. And then it went away in 30 seconds. They went on a -11 run in 30 seconds.
Yeah, one thing that Steven talked about, he asked one of the reporters, how long does it take to turn over the ball? And it's a second.
1 second.
A second.
Yeah.
And so those 3 turnovers, the 3 seconds impacted the final 10 or so minutes that the Tigers played basketball. And it was true. That what was the run? Was it 32-6? The extended run that Texas A&M went on?
Yeah, I think so. Cause
that cannot happen. No matter if you're turning the ball over, that cannot happen. As a young team, I think this team, if they're all 2 or 3 years older, things like that don't happen.
Probably so.
And if you have a coach, who's been, doing this, Stephen Pearl has been coaching Auburn for a long time, but, it's his first season as the head coach here, and so it's all kind of new to them. And in those runs, they probably don't happen with a more experienced team, and, it's frustrating. But
it is.
You're exactly right. Like, there's nothing else you can do. You can't really pout and moan about it because you have the toughest game and probably to this point the most important game of your season on Saturday.
Yeah. I do want to get into the game last night a little bit because we haven't even looked at stats or anything. Keyshawn Hall, another great game. 32 points,
absolutely,
12 rebounds. He did miss a couple of key free throws and he had a couple of key turnovers, but really great game from him. Sway doesn't show up crazy on the score sheet, 11, 4, and 2, but you could feel his presence in the game. Tahad was solid. Murph has been good, and we've been gone We haven't talked to y'all since before Purdue, so a couple of games back to go. If you think about Georgia as well, Tahad played really well coming off the bench in that role. This team has some of the pieces. They're low on depth, and that just got worse last night. We know that Jovic is going to be out for a little while. We don't know how long, but he only played 7 minutes last night. They were key minutes. He was playing really great to start the game, played very well against Georgia, and you wonder if he doesn't foul out if Auburn wins that game in overtime. One thing that we saw that we thought was really interesting, Elijah Freeman, just 15 minutes last night in two kind of long spurts on either side of the game. Really didn't play much at all in that middle section of the game when Auburn was dominating. Came in late, made a difference, didn't look good in plus-minus because he was in during those that plus 11 run in 30 seconds, which not at all on him. That was mostly Keyshawn Hall and Tahad Pettiford struggling to get the ball in.
I don't think he even touched the ball once during that sequence. So, but you're right, Rett. For me, Elijah Freeman, he's a difference maker on this team, and he's going to continue to be a difference maker. I would love to see him play more than 15 minutes, and he definitely will now that Phillip is going to be out for an extended period of time. But he played 23 minutes versus Georgia, had a great impact, and then only 15 against A&M. Now, I'm not the coach. I'm not Stephen Pearl. I don't know if there's something going on behind the scenes, if it's a matchup issue, if there's a reason he's not getting these minutes. But I think he is a player for Auburn that can really continue to thrive in the minutes that he gets. And we've seen him, he's had the ball in his hand in big moments this season. And I think last night they just kind of failed to find him a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think the other thing that was tough for him last night was that Auburn's bigs were playing pretty well. Murph, Hall, and Sway all had good games. And so there's only so many minutes to go around. Auburn's rotation is going to get even shorter without Jovic. Magwood played 8 minutes last night, and they weren't good. Started the game really tough with 3 turnovers in the first 2 minutes. One of them he got a little unlucky that it was counted a turnover. He turned the ball over, then got back, played great defense, got a rebound, and fell out of bounds, and that's a third turnover. But this team just doesn't feel rarely does this team feel like they're in sync.
Yeah.
And those moments certainly don't seem to be coming when Caden Magwood is on the floor. Tahad, I thought, was fine last night. Inefficient. Didn't really turn the ball over, but he also hasn't been getting the offense going. And a couple of buddies and I were texting about this, and I want to see your take on this. The only guy on this team right now that feels like an Auburn basketball player since Bruce Pearl has been here, like the type of player Auburn goes out and gets, is Kevin Overton.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of thinking in my head as you were explaining that, who was he going to say, and I had a feeling it was going to be KO. KO is a guy who is going to set the tone from the second he steps out on the floor. Last night I remember watching after Tahad turned the ball over. It was second half. I don't remember the exact play, but Overton got onto him, and he was letting him know. It wasn't like a gentle coaching moment. It was, we got to be better. Like, we are throwing this game away, which at the time they were. And Kevin Overton is a guy who I think you can look to in pretty much any situation in the game to get you back on track. And that was what 7 or 8 guys on last year's Auburn team were for head coach Bruce Pearl. You're not wrong. I think as time goes on, we are going to find more of those guys.
Yeah, and that's not a shot at anybody else.
No,
I think
absolutely not.
I think Sway fits that role. I think Murph fits that role if you go back to the early Bruce Pearl bigs that were a little undersized and scrappy. Horace Spencer type. Yeah. I think Murph is better than Horace Spencer was, but that style of player. But I just think you look at Keyshawn Hall, you look at Tahad Pettiford, those two guys, namely, their offense is so good. But what has made Bruce Pearl teams, and now I think what Stephen Pearl wants this team to be, is defense. And he said it all year, man. When Tahad gets down in the stance, he can guard anybody on the outside. But you got to make that happen. And that, to me, you gave up 104 against Georgia in overtime. You gave up 90 against Texas A&M. I'm not asking this team to be last year's team defensively, but you've got to make some strides, and I don't feel like we've seen that improvement yet in the season. I think we've seen the offense improve and figure each other out a little bit, and there are moments where it clicks and looks really good. The defense still just, especially, I do think Jovic impacts the defense. I thought in the 7 minutes he played good defense last night. I don't know what needs to change, but they're not clicking defensively. And I think that's a place where KO can be a leader. And if you want to win some SEC games, I think this team is middle of the pack in a really good SEC conference. That KO is gonna be the guy that steps up and pulls everybody else up with him.
I agree. It's a great take. And going back to your point on Phillip, this is the worst. There's not a good time to lose a player to injury, but this is the worst time to lose a player, especially Phillip. He probably had, in my opinion, his best game in an Auburn Tiger uniform against Georgia.
Probably
and
so.
He has really just kind of taken to this new role, and he's shown tremendous growth throughout. I remember watching him the first few games of the season. It was like, can this guy even get minutes in the rotation going forward? And he made one of the biggest impacts on the floor in Athens. And you're right. You said earlier, if he wouldn't have fouled out, I think the outcome of the game might be a little different. But for him to go down, someone has to step up defensively. And Overton doesn't quite have the size that Phillip has, but it's going to be the same attitude, the same. They're going to try to be accomplishing the same thing defensively, and that's lifting up the rest of the team, just being a steady presence on that side of the floor. And at 2 straight games that Auburn's allowed 90 points in regulation, and so that has to change. That cannot happen Saturday if they want to win, I'll tell you that.
Well, and to that same point, we haven't talked about it much. He didn't play much, but losing Mech since the start of the year also affects the defense because you lose Jovic, okay, probably that's Mech minutes. You get a little bigger. Your game changes, but you get a little bigger. Now he's down, and depth is going to hurt us. Abdul Bashir being hurt makes this team way different than what anybody thought it was going to be going into the year. I think we're going to see a lot more Simon Walker minutes. We saw some good minutes from him last night. Nothing crazy, but good basketball, good hustle, a guy that's going to grow into his role. But they got to grow up quick. The SEC is tough. I think the really positive sign for this team is they have not lost to a bad team. Every team they've lost to is a tournament team, probably a top 6 seed. If Georgia keeps going how they have been, I think A&M is going to be better at the end of the year than they are now. I think they've grown a lot.
Buckyball's clicking.
It is.
I mean,
it is. And we saw last night moments where it didn't, and then we saw that as soon as a couple of things went their way, they just poured it on.
It can ignite. It can. And the one thing
as soon as they started hitting the threes, because they at one point were shooting like 25% from 3. They hit 3 or 4 straight. They ended the night over 40% from 3, and that was what won them the game.
Yeah.
Was if you look in the box score, everything is even or leans a little bit Auburn's way, except for 3-point percentage.
Yeah, and it was really. Well, I'll say this first. Texas A&M has incredible stamina. Like they fit.
Pressed
Texas
all
A&M is so
long.
fit, and they pressed the first few minutes of the game. They were getting turnovers off the press, and then they were still pressing, not as effectively, and they come right out after halftime.
I mean,
and they're pressing again. They're creating turnovers, and the credits to Texas A&M because those turnovers turned into shots that every single one was going in.
Yeah,
like they weren't necessarily like layups or turnovers.
No,
for easy
they hit
buckets.
A couple of tough threes,
Just
transition pull-ups,
big time shots when they needed it most. Pop Isaacs made a couple of them down the stretch. How many did he finish with? He had 21 points, 4 of 8 from 3. I want to say 3 or maybe all 4 came in the second frame. So just timely shooting from Texas A&M, and it rewards that press. And I think that's a team that can really catch fire. Not to sit too long on Texas A&M, but I think this will end up being a loss that doesn't crush Auburn at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think come Saturday, or I guess come Sunday, depending on what A&M does Saturday, they probably find their way into the poll. Georgia lost last night, but they're 18. I think all of Auburn's losses next week are to ranked teams, and that sounds like cope and like excuses, and it is to an extent. To an extent, golly, hard to say. Having a hard time.
Hey, it's first day of classes,
Oh man,
brain's already fried.
Yeah, break was great. But yeah, Auburn, as long as they can beat the teams they should beat, and unfortunately, I do think A&M was a team they should have beaten. But down the stretch, if you beat the teams you should beat and at least play in the games where the teams are better than you, you finish 500 in the SEC play, you're going to make the tournament. This team, to me, is very similar to the team from 3 years ago, Janai's first season, where a lot of new guys, stuff isn't quite clicking yet. There's not a clear number one guy. I mean, Keyshawn Hall is the scorer on this team, but there's still not a. We thought it was going to be Tahad coming into the year, so I think there's. I don't think that's a locker room problem or anything, but there's still just kind of pull on this team isn't centered around one guy. And I think as SEC play goes on, they'll grow and they'll figure that out. There's a lot of positives from this team, but they have got to get more consistent.
I agree. Consistency is going to be key down the stretch. And another thing I want to touch on briefly, Todd Pettiford 2 games in a row coming off the bench. Stephen Pearl said in the post-game presser last night, if he continues to handle his business off the court, you'll find him in that starting role Saturday. How important do you think it is for him to be inserted back into that starting 5 for this team to really – because there's been a few slow starts from the Tigers to really kind of get out and get running?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I thought he played really well off the bench against Georgia. I thought he played pretty well off the bench last night. Came off the bench all season last year. Yeah. So I do think it is important. I think having your best 5 out there to start is key. But man, if he's going to always play better coming off the bench, I think that's something you have to think about. It's important, though. It's absolutely important. You got to start with your best 5 guys, and they have to – you got to play great basketball from the start, especially against Arkansas. We were talking before we started recording about how many great coaches there are in the SEC. Probably none better than Cal at Arkansas. And then you've got Missouri with Dennis Gates, and then you've got South Carolina with Lamont Paris, and these teams
and those
are just so well coached.
3 next opponents.
Yeah,
and so
great coaches. Yeah. And even though you look at Missouri, you look at South Carolina, Auburn goes in wanting to win those games, thinking they should win those games. But those are really great coaches who have terrorized better Auburn teams with when Missouri went 0-18 in conference, they scared Auburn a couple of seasons ago. These teams can do a lot. South Carolina doesn't look crazy right now, although they looked really good against LSU last night. Man, I just you look at the schedule and the SEC is really tough, and it's a little bit down this year from what it was last year, but it's still really deep. And Auburn, the difference between 5 SEC wins and 10 SEC wins is a couple of swings of the ball. Exactly. I mean, it's just going to depend on how it bounces, and Auburn cannot get caught. What's the word I want? They can't let those moments in 1 or 2 games define the season. And
I think, like you said, it all depends on the swing of a ball. We could easily be on this podcast right now talking about a 2-0 Auburn Tigers team in SEC play.
In 2 very weird endings.
Exactly, yeah. But that's just not the case. That's the reality of it. It's now an 0-2 team we're talking about. And so now we learn even more about this team and the ability, after 2 pretty, I would say, heartbreaking losses, as heartbreaking as you can get in your first 2 games of a conference slate, a miracle shot against Georgia to tie it at the buzzer down 4 with 0.7 to go, and then, a nearly half-court heave overturned. That's brutal. What we're going to learn from this team is how are they going to be able to bounce back, especially, I mean, we keep talking about this game Saturday because it in my opinion, it's so huge. It's such a big game for Auburn.
Yeah, I think, if you can get a win against Arkansas, everything there's such a relief. Like, that's something that you can build off of. On the other hand, if you start 0-3 in conference play, you start to fall down those stairs, and there's not a lot of landings. There's not a lot of places to pick yourself back up because it's just going to keep getting harder the deeper into the season you go. And so you get a really good team at home, a team that has shown some weakness this season. I mean, like I said, the SEC is down a little bit. The teams that everybody thought was going to be great haven't been as good, but then Vanderbilt's been really good. I mean, there's nowhere to catch your breath. And so you got to create those places. You get a win against Arkansas, you catch your breath. But I think you said it. We're going to see how tough this team is and how well they respond. They are led by a really tough head coach. And the stuff that Stephen Pearl said in the press conference last night, when he could have sat ragging on the officials and frustrated at how the game went, and I'm sure he was. But he said, look, we just got to lock in. He said, I trust this team. I trust that they are going to grow. Like, we just got to get on to the next game. They're tough. We're tough. And that, to me, is like the best thing to hear from a head coach in a position. I mean, first season, brand new roster, every excuse in the world to be frustrated and be angry. And instead, I think this team is led really well. And I think they've got that leadership from the players as well. We didn't get players in the press conference last night, but this team is not super old, but some experience with Murph and Key and Kevin Overton, and in press conferences have been leaders. There's a lot of, I think, maturity in the youth, especially with Sway. I think he is a dude who, not just on the basketball court, but off the basketball court, is mature and a leader in the way he works. It's not particularly vocal, but this team is tough and this team is mature, and you just really want to see that translate to wins. And it might not this season, but you hope that it does, and it certainly gives you hope going forward for the next 16 games of a really tough SEC schedule.
Yeah, and the message was from Stephen Pearl, man, I just cannot wait to get back in the gym tomorrow morning and just start grinding. He says, there's something there. There's something in this team. I know it's in there. It's up to us to really bring that out of us. And I think that's a message, like you said, that is better than the ones Auburn fans have been used to hearing in the past. Like, we're close. Now I just can't wait to get to work tomorrow morning. After losing like that, no one wants to go to practice the next day, but Stephen Pearl, I think that's a positive sign for the Tigers as well, as kind of a good image and theme for the team.
Yeah. Now you just got to see that translate, and the opportunity will come. The Tigers host the Arkansas Razorbacks Saturday, January 10th. That game is at 5 p.m. in Neville Arena. We will be there and hopefully be back sometime Sunday afternoon with a recap of that and a look ahead at more of